5, 4, 3. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Rob Frost, Chairman of the Republican Party. Glad to be with you here this afternoon for a virtual leadership briefing. Now, when we scheduled this briefing back in January and sent out invitations initially back in February, this wasn't the way we anticipated we'd be getting together. But of course, circumstances have intervened with the COVID-19 pandemic and the stay-at-home order that we're currently under. And so we are bringing this briefing to you by virtual means, webcast. We're really pleased to be here at Rock the House in Oakwood Village. We thank them for their production capabilities. And we're going to have a little bit of fun with this, get all your questions answered, and I know you'll have a very informative briefing. Now, what we don't have is the open bar at the Union Club right now. So I want to ask each of you who are logged in and watching to get a drink of your choice near at hand, settle in for a great update as we go through our briefing here tonight. So let me go over the agenda of what we're going to cover for you here tonight. I'm going to give, first of all, a finance overview of the Finance Committee so far as we hit the quarter poll in 2020. I'm going to tell you a little bit also about what we're looking at now that we are under reduced and limited operations. We're also going to hear from Executive Committee Chairman Peter Corrigan. He is here tonight as well, and he's going to be fielding a lot of the questions as they come in. And then we have with us our guest and member of the Republican Party of Cuyahoga County Finance Committee, Matt Dolan, Senator Matt Dolan, who is the chairman of the Ohio Senate Finance Committee. So I want to thank Finance Committee Chairman Erwin Haber for his leadership and all we have done so far this year. We can go on to the next slide, and I'll give an overview of where we are at this point in the year. Now, our goal that we laid out when 2020 started and we did our budget was for the Finance Committee to raise $540,000 this year. We have so far raised to date commitments totaling $276,000 and change. We still have left to raise, though, over $330,000. That is in part twofold. One is $72,000 in commitments that are still out there, not yet received. Those are commitments many times a member has made an installment payment commitment, particularly at our higher levels of Finance Committee leadership, or it's somebody who recently made a commitment and we have not yet received that contribution in. So between cash in hand of just over $200,000, commitments outstanding of about $72,000, but we do still need to raise then an additional $260,000 in new commitments that we need to get out there. How do we do that? Through new members. 115 members of the Finance Committee so far. Thank you all for being one of those Finance Committee members. But we want to double that. In fact, that number's off a little bit. 115 and 230 should say left to goal 115. That's right where we are, is halfway to goal in terms of membership. Now, let me be clear. We're not asking anything of you here today. We're glad you're already supporting us. Many of you with us since our finance dinner back in December. We are having a very healthy first part of this year, in fact. To be ending March, to be at the quarter poll and have already raised over $200,000 in hand and nearly $280,000 in commitments was a tremendous place to be. We had a very healthy March in terms of both commitments and collections, raising over $30,000, right on par with what we did in 2019 in March. But we are going to be looking at both the operational and expense side and the fundraising side, particularly as we now have today an extended stay-at-home order that prevents us from gathering in larger groups and doing traditional fundraising. Where we're going to be looking is first at how do we reduce overhead, how do we become lean and get through this the right way. Now, so many of you know we've got a great staff that we work with. Jeff Grajewski, our Executive Director, and Colin Jackson, our Director of Minority Engagement. But one thing I can tell you as we look at rent, as we look at other overhead around how we operate this party, the commitments I make to all of you before we come to you to ask you to do anything more is I'm not going to be taking any salary as chairman of this party for the duration of while we are under a stay-at-home order and can't be doing our normal fundraising operations. And as I say, we will be coming and talking to you about helping us meet new members and even talking to you about what more you can do to help this party. But we're here today to find out how this stay-at-home order and this epidemic is affecting you, getting you good information about what the state has done so far, and talk to you about how your party is continuing to work to support candidates in this extended primary election and on to November. And so with this, I actually want to turn it over to Pete Corrigan to introduce himself. Studio size here means that he's in another part of the building here, so we are maintaining proper distance. But Pete, glad to have you here as well and fielding questions tonight.
Yeah, hi everybody. First of all, thanks for your patience in our first try at this virtual conference. So we appreciate your patience and your understanding in how we do this. I wanted to mimic Rob's comments. We took a hard look at everything, and so we are both taking, I guess you'd call them salary cuts, to about as far as you can until such time as we actually get things started back up again. We will be we'll be in a state of austerity, I guess you should put it that way. What hasn't changed is in addition to the internal operational issues that we've been trying to cut back and resolve, we have the external operation issues. And from the 32 different races that are going on right now, I'm fielding questions every day and working with candidates all the way up and down the slate. So that continues, and it's going to go on throughout the shutdown, and we'll keep supporting that. So that said, I'll be here working on the question board and turn it back over to Rob. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. So what that does, by the way, by cutting overhead the ways that we have, by talking with our landlord, by looking at certain services we can pare back, and by paring back our salaries of your two chairmen, is that takes us from having about 2 months cash on hand, which is what we had when we entered this stay-at-home order, that we now believe with the reduced overhead, we have about 3 months cash on hand. That's great to have. We believe we can weather through this and all be working together and continuing to support candidates through all of that. Now, speaking about that, the order, what I want to do now is go to a video we have prepared on Governor DeWine and the latest status from him.
A new poll finds Ohioans approve of Governor Mike DeWine's response to the coronavirus pandemic. I'm Idea Stream's Taylor Haggerty reporting on the latest Baldwin-Wallace University survey of 4 Midwestern states. The poll looks at attitudes of registered voters ahead of the 2020 election in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. It asked participants about recent measures taken by both state and federal governments in light of the coronavirus pandemic, including the closure of schools and daycares. Roughly 48% of Ohio respondents say they approve of Governor DeWine's steps to prevent the spread of COVID-19 overall. Lauren Copeland with Baldwin-Wallace.
It seems like for the most part, people are prioritizing their health and their family's health over economic concerns.
The decision to delay Ohio's primary day also received broad support, with about 71% approval. BW conducted the poll prior to DeWine's stay-at-home order. Taylor Haggerty, 90.3 WCPN.
Well, thank you. It's great to have that understanding of the confidence people have in our governor's leadership. We also have enjoyed tremendous leadership from our General Assembly, who came together last week, convened and put together a package of legislation in response to the coronavirus to show that they are working with this governor, this lieutenant governor, this administration, that we can weather through this. Now, that package was bundled up in an omnibus bill, House Bill 197. And what I want to do is go over a little bit of what House Bill 197, one of the main aspects of which I have a lot of knowledge on in my work. And let's go to our first slide on that bill as one of your members of the Board of Elections. So this bill, which was passed last week and signed into law by the governor with immediate effect, one of the main things that you've heard about is that it extended voting in our primary election. Now, that doesn't mean the primary election date moved. Primary election date was and still is March 17th. But because the polls were closed that day by health order, we're continuing voting on through by mail. And for most of you, the way you will vote in this election is going to be by mail. So I encourage you, go to the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections website now, request your ballot, fill out that application, print it out, fill it out completely, request your Republican ballot, sign it, date it, and mail it in. You will get your ballot back in a matter of days. You can vote that from the convenience of your home, put a stamp on it, And no, in fact, let me correct myself. You don't even have to put a stamp on it because our General Assembly is paying the return postage for that. There will be limited in-person voting on the last day of voting, April 28th, at the Board of Elections only, and only for disabled voters and homeless voters or any other voter who does not have a place where they can receive mail. Any details that you may need on that, you can get at the Board of Elections website. Again, that is 443vote.com, or you can go to voteohio.gov, particularly if you're from another county but happen to be tuning in to us tonight. You can go to voteohio.gov to get all of the information, and your Cuyahoga County Board of Elections website, 443vote.com. Let's go on to the next slide, though, because there's a lot more that House Bill 197 did. Some of these things you may have heard much about in the last week or so. On unemployment, the governor has it relieved some of the requirements for people to qualify for unemployment and expanded eligibility, make it easier for people who find themselves unemployed unexpectedly in this epidemic to get unemployment benefits. What the state also did is extended tax deadlines, filing deadlines and payments to correspond with what the federal government and the IRS had already extended on out. We can go on to the next slide, please. One of the other things that House Bill 197 is ensuring continuity of government operations. Everything from making sure that certain crucial operations will remain open, to allowing public boards, councils, committees to be able to meet virtually, like we're doing tonight, to be able to meet electronically, as long as they're letting the media and the public know how they're meeting, and that the public and the media have an opportunity to participate in and hear those meetings. Also, House Bill 197 prohibited cutting off anyone's water during the course of the emergency. Let's go to the next slide, please. On healthcare, of course, this is a healthcare crisis. You would expect some of what the response would deal with would be authorizing Director Amy Acton to take certain measures that she will need to make. But of particular note, I want to point out extending the ability for recent nursing graduates to obtain a temporary license to be able to practice and to be on the front lines of this crisis under that temporary license right now after their graduation. Let's go to the next slide, please. Also on education, this, of course, many of you have heard much about. The schools in Ohio are now remaining closed through at least May 1st at this point. What House Bill 197 has put in place, the emergency measures, for example, to allow the electronic means of communication to be delivered, to waive the state testing and report card, district report card requirements, and also to allow any senior in high school who was on track for graduation to be assured that they are going to be to be able to graduate on time as expected. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is our last slide on this overview, which is on daycare. You also heard about this. This was a difficult decision for the governor to make, as many of these have been, because as we shut down most of the daycares in Ohio, that then put a burden on those who are working in essential services, such as our doctors and our nurses and others in essential manufacturing. So there are some daycares that are going to be able to be open under special licensure, but it is very restricted and with the same sort of spacing and self-isolation requirements that we're all operating under. And so with that, what I want to mention is we were going to have 3 of our state senators with us in addition to Senator Matt Nolan. Each has their own area of expertise. And with the way that things have changed in the course of this crisis, I spoke with each of them. They're all very much looking forward to coming with us and being with us in the future when we can again gather. But what I want to focus is on the positive. And we've got with us Senate Finance Committee Chairman Matt Nolan, who is really one of the leaders in getting House Bill 197. Matt, you heard me give a very big picture overview. Anything you'd like to add about that legislation?
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everybody. I hope everyone is remaining healthy and safe at home. And as you may have heard today, the governor has extended the shelter in place or stay home order until May 1st. So we will continue under these conditions for a little while longer. One of the questions that I got a lot is, why did we settle on these 28 provisions? What we did last week is decide what are tier 1 emergency policy issues that would help the governor today. And so what Rob just outlined are the things that we needed to get in place so that our education community understood how the remainder of the year was going to take place, assuming we stay in this online learning. Issues with unemployment. We wanted to make sure that people understood that you are going to receive unemployment and the traditional rules don't apply. You don't have to wait 1 week to get your benefit. You don't have to search for work while you get your benefit. And when we did this provision, the federal government had not yet concluded the CARES Act. So we extended eligibility for those individuals who are unemployed either through being laid off or through the governor's order or a health department, a health director's order that you are not able to work, or if your employer said, hey, you are sick, you are showing symptoms, we don't want you to work, and they do not have a paid sick leave. All those folks under our bill are eligible for unemployment. Now we are working with the federal government because they have are now going to allow 1099 individuals, so independent contractors who find themselves out of work are now also going to be eligible for unemployment. We have to work through the rulemaking with that because obviously they don't contribute to the unemployment system, so we have to create a different avenue for them to be available. I also want to remind folks that obviously this is a difficult time and a number of people are calling in to unemployment either through the website or through the phone lines, and it's been difficult. No matter when you get through, you will be eligible for unemployment from the date of your unemployment. Even if it takes you a week or a few days to get in the system, your checks will be backdated to the date people were unemployed. I also just want to highlight a little bit, one of the things that emergencies bring out is opportunities. And one of those opportunities is right here in Northern Ohio. We have the Hondros School of Nursing. And last Friday, they graduated 280 nurses. And what we were able to do is work with them and say, look, these are 280 people who otherwise now would be going on to receive their certificate to practice. But through the state's order, the licensing agency upon which they would take the test is closed. So we quickly got together and created a temporary occupational license so that these 280 students and likewise throughout the state can immediately start working in the hospitals and other healthcare areas to relieve the burden on our healthcare officials. I also want to remind people that while we all might wonder about how much our government is going to creep into our lives, everything in this bill is in temporary law. So when the March 9th emergency order is rescinded, or we come to December 1st, 2020, whichever is earlier, these entire provisions will dissipate and we will go back to permanent law with one exception, and that is your license. So we will use your driver's license as the easiest example. If during this time of the emergency order, your driver's license expires, you cannot be cited. If you get pulled over, you can't be cited for a invalid license or any license that you may have. When the order is rescinded or December 1st, you will have an additional 90 days upon which to get your license up to date. So you will not be required on the day of rescission to rush out and get your license up to date or any professional license you're working under. Other than that, these are temporary laws and will go away as soon as the order is rescinded. I will also close here by saying we also know that there are other policy initiatives that we need to work on. We need to make sure that when we come out of this, we are positioned to regain our stronghold in our economy. We need to get people back to work. We need to make sure that regulations that might hamper somebody from getting back to work are not an impediment. So I think over the course of the next month, you're going to see the legislature work on with the governor the next phase of this emergency, and that is let's come out of this emergency and let's get back to our strong economy as soon as we can. So Rob, I look forward to answering questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the Finance Committee tonight.
Great. Senator, thank you. Thank you for providing a lot more detail than I was able to do in my interview. Thank you for being with us here tonight. 6 feet away. Yep. Can't reach each other. So we know that we have some questions already coming in. In fact, I think Chairman Pete Corrigan, you've got our first question that I believe you were going to take.
The first question is a question on the difference between the PPP and unemployment. And the PPE, which is the Payment Protection Program, is mutually exclusive from unemployment. They expect that they're going to issue checks 2 weeks from tomorrow for anyone earning $99,000 or less, which means for a married couple, it would be $198,000. There's a $1,200 check for each person. So a married couple under $198,000 will receive $2,400. Unemployment is a separate program. So somebody that applies for unemployment, say tomorrow, will be receiving those benefits mutually exclusively from whatever the PPP program generates. We also, I guess, we have another question on election certification.
Okay.
It's the party official election under the current guidelines. I think, Rob, that's a question for you that just came in. If you can speak about the election certification and what the processes and steps are.
Great, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I gave a quick overview of how we're voting, but then it does become how do we conclude this election? Easiest way to think of it is every other date around the election was moved off 6 weeks. So rather than this election being certified in mid to late April, our certification date is going to be May 19th. That's when the Board of Elections will meet to certify this election. All of the things that the Board of Election needs to do post-election day and going up to that certification date are all dates that still correspond just 42 days later than they would have originally been. After the certification of the election, our party will meet to organize, as we do in every presidential primary year. And that tentative date, although I say we're 90% certain, we will have our organizational meeting on May 30th. We had anticipated having that meeting in mid-April. That now is going to be late May, 6 weeks later. So we will get full details out on that to everyone. And in fact, it's a good point for me to note, by the way, some of you who are on this webcast today may have also been on a town hall meeting we had for all Central and Executive Committee members earlier this week. That for all party members is something that we're going to be continuing to do on a weekly basis. In fact, we're going to have Senator Dolan with us again next week for the full Central and Executive Committees, as we talk about party governance, organization, and operation, and how we continue working with candidates during this very different election year as we move towards a successful conclusion of the primary and into the general. So now you see the number down there to text your questions in, 216-220-7371. Do we have another question queued up?
Yeah, we do. We have a couple of questions here, Rob.
Okay.
The next question is for Senator Dolan on businesses helping. It says, if my business wants to help in any way, where should we go to sign up for help?
Okay, so if you're following the governor's 2 o'clock press conference, you know there's a lot of websites being set up and information being passed. So for a company who particularly now can convert or is in the personal protection clothing and masks, we need you to go to it's a website called repurpose.com. And on that site, it allows the company to outline what they're able to do, how quickly they can turn it around, and you'll hear from somebody from the state government as well. We are recognizing that the timing of converting a manufacturing plant to something new takes time. So the governor would ask you to be honest in your assessment of how quickly you can produce product, because the urgency is now, and if there's an order promised, they want to make sure that they can do that order. I would also tell my fellow finance committee members, if you go to my website, electmattdolan.com, I have a coronavirus page which also outlines all the different state agencies, all the different websites upon which you can get information about the latest orders from the governor, where you can volunteer, where you can drop off food goods, where you can do your repurposing. There's lots of websites set up, how you can access unemployment. We put something up for your small businesses, how you can apply for a small business loan or grant from Ohio. And as soon as the rules come down from the federal government, we'll have that up on our site as well.
And Senator, just to clarify, I got a message here. The full website on that the governor announced, repurposingproject.com. Partnership, looks like the Ohio Hospital Association, Ohio Manufacturers Association, Jobs Ohio, and the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, along with another number of other public and private partners. So,
yep,
thank
wonderful. You. That's why I had to get people to my website so we actually get the right website addresses.
There it is. Do we have more questions?
Next question looks again to be for Senator Dolan. It's on affordability of the legislation. It's Senator Dolan, how the heck are we going to pay for all of the state legislature's benefit expansions?
So that is a great question, and that's why I talked about tier 1, tier 2s. There is, with the exception of the unemployment, which obviously is expanding, and we're gonna have to work with the federal government, very little money spent in this bill. The actual GRF, General Revenue Fund expenditure, is $7 million, and that is to go to the operations of the extension of the election. We were very concerned, I was very concerned, that we do not immediately go into the fiscal side of this emergency, because we don't know what our state revenues are going to be and how many people are going to be back at work. So again, with the exception of the unemployment, which we are working hand in hand with the federal government to make sure that those funds are there for those that remain unemployed, they will get their checks. Everything else, it does not have a fiscal component to this. When we start moving to the next phase, and we are going to make sure that monies get spent wisely, that's when we're going to have to make sure we're matching up any expenditures with any revenues that are coming from the state. Now, the difference being, we are anticipating a lot of money coming from the federal government that will flow into the states for a variety of different reasons. $150 billion is going to go to hospitals across the state, across the country. $50 billion are going to health centers across the state. Each state is going to get a share of about $100 billion. So that question about where we're going to pay for that at the federal level is very much germane. But when we receive those dollars from the federal government, we are hoping that we can be surgical in how we spend it and not create a long-term expenditure for the state of Ohio.
Thank you, Senator. And yep, back to Pete for the next question.
Yeah, the next one is for Rob, and it's on the I can't quite see it here. Are there plans in place to address voting issues relating to the virus in November? And if not, shouldn't there be?
So there are plans being developed for how we're going to have voting in November. There is, I believe, a lot of discussion already of whether we may want to have that election be primarily voting by mail, if not entirely voting by mail. Now, that's a decision left to the General Assembly. They are the ones who put in place this extension of voting for the primary election, and it is the General Assembly that can decide if we're going to change the way we vote, and if so, are we doing that temporarily just for this November, or is it something that we're making a permanent change going forward? I will tell you there is some downside to going to entirely voting by mail, but that downside can be accommodated. We can work through anything as a democracy, as a representative democracy, and how we administer that. There are states, as you know, I'm sure, in this country that are primarily and even entirely voting by mail. What I don't want to see us do as a Board of Elections member and a party leader is to see us rush into that too early. I believe we have a great tradition that works very well of precinct-based voting in this state and through most of this country. I'd like to see us get back to doing that. But I would also say that if we feel we have a health pandemic and health crisis that has any chance of continuing on in to the fall, where people would feel they're having to choose between their health and safety over exercising their right and their voice to vote, then we should be having every tool at their disposal so they can exercise that vote by mail, that they get that opportunity extended to them, and that they have the opportunity to do that without having to go down to the local school or city hall or whatever else other facility it might be. So that's a long way of saying, yes, it's being discussed. Yes, the questioner is right. We should be making those plans now. And that is already being discussed between the Secretary of State's office working with boards of elections and the governor and Secretary of State working with the General Assembly.
Yeah, we have another question. It looks like it's one that I can take. It's roughly, it's what are the, before I say that, please feel free to text your questions to the phone number at the bottom of the screen. And I can guarantee anonymity, since we can't really see who the questions are from, just the phone numbers. So please feel free to text in what you'd like. The next question is, what are the SBA's filing guidelines? And I think this question refers to how to process the paperwork for the small business loan bail, the small business bailout, I guess, in the form of loans. That program starts on Friday. They start awarding the actual loans on Friday, and from what I can tell, it's fairly liberal. If anyone's ever followed an SBA or filed an SBA loan in the past, it's very similar to that process, but it's but they've relaxed those guidelines. Some people that I've worked with already have indicated that they've filed the paperwork already and they've received some kind of a number, so you can do that now. You can get the step-by-step process on the www.sba.gov. There's a process there that you can follow. They have it outlined. I will say it covers for 2 months employment, continued employment, salaried and benefits, and it also covers 25% of rent, utilities, and leases, some general operating qualifications. It's for businesses with less than 500 people. There's a limit to the salary coverage, and that is employees that are making less than $100,000. And there's a whole host of other requirements. Disqualifiers include if you're in default on any kind of a loan to the government, or you have a lien on your business. Some of the obvious disqualifiers for loan, they will disqualify for that. But generally speaking, it doesn't nearly have the same kind of rigor as a normal SBA loan or even a bank loan. You can also go into a bank and process a loan. Most banks that are processing SBA loans, and all of the big ones in town are doing it. That's another way to process it, but you can actually get started online. If you have any questions, feel free to call me. I'd be happy to try to answer your questions for you and get you started. It looks like a pretty decent program. It lasts for about 2 months. It'll cover 2 months. The coverage is February 15th through September 30th of 2020. And you have until December 15th of 2020 to make an application related to that period of time. So be happy to answer any questions, and you can send those along. Next question, it looks to be for Rob, and it's about our stepping back plan, our recovery plan. It says, when we come to the beginning of May and assuming our situation is improved, what is the plan to begin stepping back to normalcy? I think it's for Rob. Maybe it's for Senator Dolan. Either one of you guys may have ideas on that one.
I'll take the first part of it for the party operations, and we're going to follow the lead as we see that opening up happening. So we're going to return to normalcy in one sense slowly, but as demonstrated by this briefing, we're not going to be caught flat-footed. As I mentioned before, we're going to keep weekly teletown hall meetings going for all of our committee membership. We're going to be making plans for rescheduling events that got postponed, such as our Lincoln Day. We're going to have those dates on people's calendars. Once we know that we see that light at the end of the tunnel and what that end date looks like, that you're going to be allowed to have meetings of more than 100 people, for example, or even more than 10 at this point, we will have plans put in place. We will have events back on the calendar, and we will be up and running and fully the way that we were before on events and programming as we were. But again, to reassure you, in terms of party day-to-day operations, Executive Director Jeff Grajewski, Director of Minority Engagement Colin Jackson, Chairman Corrigan and I are working each day, mostly from our respective homes, occasionally coming in one at a time or two at a time to party headquarters, but to keep things operating, keep all of you informed, and to keep the wheels turning. Now, I will turn to Senator Dolan maybe for a little more insight on what's your expectation on the state returning to normalcy?
So the short answer is I don't know. And defining normal is going to be a challenge. What I can tell you the conversations are about is that whether you felt like we eased into where we are today with all the particular orders, I think it's a fair assessment to say we're going to ease out of them. The biggest example would be we went from no gatherings of 100 to no gatherings of 50 to no gatherings of 10 to now shelter in place and stay at home. I think it's reasonable to think that as our situation improves, and defining that is going to be a challenge because it's going to be a medical decision as to whether we are improved or not. The economic decisions will be made after that decision is made. I think it's fair to assume that as we come out of this, it's going to be similar. We will allow to gather 10 and then 50 and then 100. Again, the medical experts cannot give us assurance that there's going to be a hard date in which this virus is no longer highly contagious. So we're going to have to get to a position where we can manage the virus, identify those who are have been inflicted with the virus, and separate them from the healthy so the healthy can continue on with normal life. That's a medical decision. That's a number of tests, how much tests are available. So it's going to be a very complicated decision, but the hope is that May 1st, May 15th, we begin the slow process of coming back to normal.
All right. And do we have one more question? Is that where we are? So we're going to go back to Pete with the final question of the evening.
We it's not really a question, but it comes in from one of my favorite politicians, Nan Baker, and it's just a comment or statement, and I'll read it. It's a good piece of information. The Cuyahoga County Council, the Cuyahoga County Council has set up a small business resource center that you can call and learn about small business resources. The Greater Cleveland Partnership and others are involved. Website is cuyahogacounty.us/help for business. So it looks like another resource that you can get involved in. I haven't checked this one yet. I'll spend some time looking at it as well, Nan, and thanks for that information. We don't have any other questions that are coming in right now.
So we're.
I just want to take a minute and thank everybody on the call. Thanks a lot to Senator Dolan for being willing to do this. And I'll turn it back over to Rob, but I also wanted to thank the Finance Committee and their support for everything we're trying to do this year and in all kinds of crazy times I've never seen anything like this in life, and I'm sure most anyone else on the call hasn't either. So we really appreciate your support. Sorry we weren't there to shake hands, and probably be a little while before we can do that. But thanks again, and I'll turn it back over to Rob and Matt. And thanks, guys.
Thanks. And as we conclude, Peter, thank you for all of that. And before I turn it finally over to Senator Dolan for his closing remarks, I want to thank all of you for the support that you've had. We've reached out to each of you, and we'll be reaching out to you again, talking to you to find out how things are going on in your corner of the world. If there's anything that we can be doing to assist you during this time. But as I mentioned before, as we look at our own operations, we're also going to be coming back to you, asking you what we can do together to make this party stronger and fully back on its feet. One of the things we are doing right now is getting out into the community, being more present and aiding where we can in the community with the Cleveland Food Bank, Director Colin Jackson working a lot on what we're doing with some of the urban churches on delivering home meals. And right before we went on the air this evening, I actually got a call from Metro Hospital for next week. Next Friday, April 10th, happens to be my birthday. And so for my birthday, I'm going to be giving. What we're going to be doing is providing meals to Metro Hospital for the doctors and nurses who are on the front lines of this crisis for their lunch next Friday, April 10th. So I ask all of you, if you want to help me with that, please just shoot me an email at rfrost@cuyahogacountyGOP.com. We want to be out there helping the community. We thank you for the support you're giving us. And in that, I want to turn it over for our close to Senator Matt Dolan.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Peter. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. I hope everyone is home and they're safe and they remain healthy. I guess my closing comments would simply be that us in the legislature understands that there are two paths to this crisis, and that is the healthcare crisis and the growing economic crisis. And so I think you're going to see us focus on making sure that we do as little damage to our economy as possible, that we get people back to working as soon as possible, and we begin the process of growing the economy. We were in a good spot. We can get back to that spot. So I appreciate everyone's patience. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns, or if I can help you in any way. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Senator. And ask each of you, if you have thoughts, if you liked this, if you didn't like it, if you have things we can improve. We're going to be working with our other state legislators, with County Councilwoman Nan Baker and her two Republican counterparts on the County Council, and our members of the United States Congress and our other elected Republican leaders to bring you good information all through this crisis. So please email us, give us your feedback. We look forward to seeing you very soon, whether it's by webcast or in person once these orders are lifted. Thanks a lot for tuning in tonight.